Hello, this is Whitfield Harrington, and I'm here to introduce to you my new teaching entitled The 7 Steps to Interpreting a Dream. First and foremost, let me give you a little background information about myself. I am the 20th child of 21 children. I'm a second generational minister, and I come from a family of dreamers. And when I say that, I'm saying that because most of the people in my family, we have dreams all the time. And even me as a young man, I can recall having hundreds of dreams. And over the course of my life, I began to discover patterns in these dreams. And so what I did was I began to pray about it, and I began to pay attention to it. And so as I paid attention to it, I began to discover patterns. And so what I'm going to be doing in this lesson is basically giving you an illustration of what many of my friends have called, who have asked me to interpret a dream. And I'm pretty much going to walk you through the steps that I go through in order to get the interpretation of the dream. Now, but first and foremost, I want to inform you that this is not a major compilation of what it means to have a dream and to get into the debate with all the scholars who have did work concerning dreams. This is going to be really more a crash course about what it takes to interpret a dream. So with that saying, I want you to understand that this is going to be like learning a new language. And when you learn a new language, you have to learn the basics first. And when you learn the basic, it takes a while for you to become fluent in the language. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be laying out a plan for you to follow. And if you follow this plan, it will show you the basics of understanding how to interpret a dream. And the more you follow these basics, the more fluent you will become in it. Now, first and foremost, there are 2 things that you must do in order to follow my method. There are 2 requirements. The first requirement is you have to write the dream down. That's an automatic requirement before we get into the 7 steps. Now, when you're writing the dream down, there are certain steps that you need to do. The first thing you need to make sure you do is write as many details as you possibly can about the dream. And the reason I say that is because we're going to be using what you have written in order to analyze the dream. So you want to be careful that you use complete sentences. And when you're using complete sentences, you want to give as much details as you possibly can. And just to give you a general idea, if you were to use, let's just say, for an example, I was riding down the highway with my husband doing rush hour traffic. That's pretty much a good example of how to use that sentence. Now, a bad example would be, I was stuck in traffic with my husband. And I'm stressing this because you really need to take caution in the way you outline your sentences and you outline your writing, because it's really going to play an important role into being able to interpret the dream. And also, you want to make sure that you use verbs. And I know that may sound weird right now, but I'll explain that later. Make sure you use plenty of verbs and plenty of verb phrases. And if more details emerge about the dream, because sometimes you remember the dream a little later, and if more details emerge, just go back and add them in to make sure that you've gotten all the details into the dream. Now, the second requirement of the dream is that you have to have the right mindset. And when I say the right mindset, let me give you just a little true story. That's a little funny story that I once heard. There was a missionary that lived in a major city, I believe it was Chicago, and she preached on the streets. And she always wore this long white dress with a white hat. And one night after one of her services on the street, she was waiting for the bus to come, and I guess the spirit was still high on her, and she got on the bus. And when she got on the bus, she paid her fare, and she turned around to the passengers on the bus, and she said, "I just want to let everybody on this bus know that if you don't get your business fixed with the Lord, you are on your way to hell." And there was a drunk guy that was on the bus. And all he heard was, "You are on your way to hell." So the guy wakes up and says, "Is that where this bus is going? I thought this bus was going downtown." And so the drunk guy said, "Well, let me off of this bus." And he staggers all the way off the bus. Now, the point of me telling that story is to show you that even though the drunk man perceived the situation off, his perception gives you a highlight or a key indication into what it takes to interpret a dream. I know that sounds kind of weird because think about it for a minute. Most people can't interpret a dream. And I'm not telling you to go out and get drunk and maybe you'll be able to decipher your dreams. No, but I'm showing you this. Let's take that situation, which was a real life situation, and let's change it into a dream so you can get the understanding of it. For instance, let's put you in the dream. Let's say you were on a bus one night, you and some friends, and you were on your way downtown to a party. And while you're sitting on the bus, all of a sudden, this lady steps on the bus with a long white dress on and she pays her fare. Then all of a sudden, she turns around and she says to everybody on the bus that if you don't get your life right with God, you are on your way to hell. And this drunk sitting beside you turns and says, "Is that where this bus is going? I thought this bus was going downtown. Let me off of this bus." And you watch the drunk guy stagger off the bus. You're still sitting there and the dream ends. Now, in order to get the meaning out of that, you would then have to look at it the same way the drunk guy did in reality. You would have to see what's underneath it. And when you do that, it would show you what the meaning of the dream is. And sometimes people get the warnings in the dream, but what they don't do is they don't apply the right mindset in a dream. And what is the right mindset? The second component of the right mindset is you have to be open-minded to receive guidance through your dreams. And not only do you have to be open-minded to receive guidance through your dreams, you have to be open-minded to receive constructive criticism. Once you set yourself in alignment to do those two things, then you can begin to perceive the warnings or the messages or the signs that come through the dreams. Because many times people get warning from dreams. And I can recall a pastor friend telling me that there was a particular cousin of his who had a dream a night before her wedding that her fiance turned into a snake. Well, that was a warning, but she didn't have the right mindset. The next day she went on and she married the guy anyway, and he hit her at the reception. He didn't wait till the honeymoon. He became abusive at the reception. She got the warning. She didn't have the right mindset, so she overlooked the warning. Can you imagine Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus? He received the message from God in a dream that Herod was trying to kill Jesus. What if he didn't have the right mindset and woke up the next morning and said, "Mary, I had this weird dream last night that, Herod was trying to kill the kid, and it must have been something I ate last night." But he applied the right mindset and he moved in the right direction that it took in order to get the warning and the message and what to do about the dream. So once you have written out the dream and you have the right mindset, then you will be able and ready to move forward and to get the meaning of the dream. Okay, step one. Step one is to identify if you have had a dream or a vision. Now, first and foremost, you have to understand that there is a difference between dreams and visions. And let me tell you the difference between dreams and vision. In a dream, it's more so of a spiritual checkup. It's like going to the doctor, but only in a spiritual sense. You can have a dream, and once you decipher the meaning of the dream, it could simply mean, "Hey, buddy, listen, you're spending too much time away from your house, at the job, away from your family and your children, and your wife is becoming pretty upset with you about this. And also, that new little secretary they've just hired at the job, she likes you and she's going to try you." And that could pretty much be the entire meaning of the dream. It's sort of a spiritual checkup. It's sort of God putting your life under an X-ray, placing it on the wall, and allowing you to look at it. But on the other hand, a vision is sort of a sneak peek into the future, or it can be a sneak peek into the spirit realm. And let me just give you an example of what I mean. Years ago, I was pastoring a small church in the South there, and One night, right before, I guess it was a Saturday night, I recalled having a vision. And in this vision, I saw a white SUV parked in the church parking lot. And I heard two words, false prophet. And I instantly knew that this was a vision, and I knew what was happening. It was a warning from God that a false prophet would be at the church the next day. So I got on the phone, called the deacons, and reminded and informed them that a false prophet would be there. And lo and behold, when I got to church, there was a white SUV in the church parking lot, and there was a weird acting preacher in the church. And this was a sneak peek into the future. So what the difference is, how do you identify the difference between those two? And the way you identify the difference between those two is, in a dream, you will be able to see yourself. You will be able to see that you have on a red sweater with your hair a certain way, or you have on glasses, or you have on your contacts. But in a vision, you will not be able to see yourself. It would be as if you're staring through a pair of binoculars. And so when you begin to see that, you will notice whether or not it's a dream or a vision. Now, I also want to give you the indication that sometimes you can have both. Certain parts of the episode will actually be a dream, and then certain parts of it would actually be a vision. And the way you determine that is whether or not you can see yourself. If you can see yourself, it's a dream. And this is a spiritual checkup giving you an indication of what's going on in your life. And if you don't see yourself and it looks as if you're staring through a pair of binoculars, it's a vision that's giving you a sneak peek into the spirit realm or into the future. Now, so let me just summarize step one for you again. The first thing you want to do is you want to identify. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to identify if this is a dream or a vision. And the way you do that is you ask yourself, can you see yourself in this? If you can see yourself in it, then it is a dream. If you cannot see yourself in it, then it is a vision. And if it's a dream, it is something that's giving you a spiritual checkup about what's going on in your life. And if it's a vision, it is an indication that what is about to happen in the future or what is happening in the spirit realm. And this is a simple technique. Just remember that. If you can see yourself, it's a dream. If you can't see yourself, it's a vision. And once you have figured that out, you would have did everything that's necessary to fulfill step one of the 7 steps. Then you're ready to go on to step 2. Okay, step 2. Step 2 is to identify the setting. Now understand that every movie sort of has a setting. Not only does a movie have a setting, it has lights, cameras, and different things that go into making that movie what it is. Where your dream does as well. It has a setting that it takes place in. And so what you want to do is you want to begin to focus on 3 things. The first thing you want to focus on is the location of the dream. Where does the dream take place? Pay attention to where does the dream start and where does the dream end. Does it start on the highway and it ends with you, somewhere in a swamp? Does it start with you flying in the sky and it ends with you in the river somewhere? So you want to pay attention to the location of the dream, because the location in a dream reveals something. It reveals a path. It reveals a path from your past to your present to the future. And what it's saying is in the location is, hey, this is what you used to be. This is what you are. And based on these circumstances and situations, this is where you will end up. So you want to pay attention to the location of the dream. Now, the second thing you want to pay attention to in the setting is the lighting. When we were doing the setup for this particular shooting, we had to do the lights here and there to make sure we had the lightings right, where the lighting actually changes the mood of what you're saying and what you're seeing. So in a dream, when you see the lighting, you want to pay attention to it. If it is a dark and gloomy setting in a dream, then it is normally a bad sign. But if you see where it's a well lit and it looks like the best part of the day, then normally it is a good sign. So you want to pay attention to the location and the lighting. And the third thing you want to pay attention to in the setting is you want to watch the weather. Normally in the dreams, there is some kind of warning with the weather. If it's a storm, is it a tornado, is it a flood? All of these things can be signs, and they can reveal what the meaning of a dream is. So you want to pay attention to the location, the lighting, and watch the weather, because those three things are going to reveal something to you. And be very cautious when you're dealing with the weather, when you see the sign of a water. Normally people would say that water is a good sign. I beg to differ. Normally water has a tendency to mean trouble. For instance, I'll give you a scripture. The Bible says, when the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. When the Bible talks about the enemy coming in like a flood, notice that it's comparing the enemy to water. Water is a force that if you do not respect the power of it, it will take your life. You can harness it and it will bring you life. But if you disrespect it, it could take your life. And so when you see it in a vision, it's telling you, you have to tread cautiously around this water. And so when you're dealing with the setting, remember these three things: the location, the lighting, and watch the weather. And once you have done those three things, you have did what is necessary to make sure that you have completed step 2 of the 7 steps. And once you've done that, then you're ready to move on to the next step. Okay, step 3 is identifying the overall subject of the dream. Now, I know that sounds kind of weird, but if you knew the overall subject, you probably knew the meaning of the dream. But what am I saying about that? Well, let's just think about a movie, for instance, out of the ordinary. Let's think about the movie King Kong. King Kong is a movie, and it has an overall subject. Well, what is the overall subject? Well, the movie is about a big giant ape that falls in love with a beautiful woman and ends up getting killed at the end of the movie. Well, basically, that's what the movie is about. But underneath that, there are a lot of different things that can be considered as the under subject. And what I'm telling you is, just like a movie has an overall subject, your dream has an overall subject. And you should focus on what is the overall subject of the dream. And one of the ways to do that, since we're writing this out, is to simply go through each sentence and take yourself back to the 2nd grade and underline every subject in every sentence. That is a practical step I'm telling you to do. Go back to every sentence and underline every subject in the sentence. And then we're going to use that in the next step in order to make everything come together. So when you begin to underline the steps in the sentences, it would help you to see the overall subject of the dream, which could be just, if we revert back to King Kong, there's a scene at the end where finally they manage to kill the ape and he falls to the ground, and someone says that, oh, it was the planes that killed him. Then Jack Driscoll makes the famous statement, no, it was beauty that killed him. And so that's what the overall subject of the movie was. It was the beauty that ended up killing the beast. And so what you're doing is you're shooting, or you're aiming, trying to underline all the subjects in every sentence, looking for one particular subject to come out to you about this entire dream. And it could be, a young lady driving down the road in a car, and she's on the wrong side of the highway. And so much could be going on in the dream, but in the dream, what it means is, it appears you're heading in the right direction, but you're doing it the wrong way. And if you don't change course, you're going to end up hitting something head on, and it's going to be very detrimental to your future. And sometimes that's what the subject of a dream is. And you have to slightly pay attention to every subject that's in the dream in every sentence in order for that to jump out to you. And when you underline all the sentences that are within the dreams, then you underline the subject within all the sentences that are within the dream, then you have completed step 3 and you're ready to move on to the next step. Okay, step 4. Identify the verbs and the verb phrases. Now, this is really a continuation of step 3. In step 3, you were told to underline the subjects in every sentence. But in step 4, you want to underline the verbs in every sentence. I know this may sound like a third grade class or something, but this is going to work if you follow it. You simply go through each sentence, find the verb in it, and any word that describes the verb, because the verb is going to describe the action of the subject. And once you begin to put the subjects with the verbs, it's starting to tell you, Cindy was driving too fast. So it's telling you that Cindy, she's driving, but she's driving too fast. So it's telling you that you're moving too fast. Finally, Cindy could have wrecked the car. Well, she's wrecked the car. Why did she wreck the car? Because she was moving too fast. And once you begin to pull those subjects and the verbs together, the meaning begins to come to you. So step 4 is very simple. Just underline the verbs. And once you have underlined the verbs, you have done everything necessary to complete step 4. And then you're ready to move on to the next step. Okay, step 5. Step 5 is to identify the signs and the symbols within the dream. Now, let me clear this up for you. Signs and symbols can come in 2 different forms. The first form they come in is a subject, and the second form they come in is a verb. Since we've underlined the subjects and we've underlined the verbs, then normally your symbols are going to be a subject or a verb. A subject is a person, place, or a thing. A verb describes the action of the subject. So when you're looking for the symbols, look for what you have underlined and to see what is symbolic about that. For instance, if we're talking about a subject, we could be talking about cars, stop sign, police officers, house, ditch, or something like that. But if we're talking about a verb, we could be talking about something as far as you're falling, you're being chased, or you're sinking, or you're flying. And once you begin to see these symbols, then you can pull them out and begin to get the meaning of them. Now, let me just take you through a particular dream that I was asked to interpret a few years ago. A young man that was an acquaintance of mine called me up and asked me to interpret a dream. And he said in this dream, he saw himself standing on a beach, looking out into the ocean, and the wind was blowing, and it was sort of a night season. And then all of a sudden, it switched to where he was on this gigantic ship out in the middle of the ocean. And he looked out into the water and he noticed a small little whirlpool beginning to develop in the ocean. Then it grew larger and larger and larger until the ship started spinning around, and finally the ship was taken under. Then all of a sudden, he was back on the beach where he started. So what happens in this dream, I began to analyze what happened, and I'm going to take you back through the steps, which is number 1, identify if it's a dream or vision. Well, it's actually both. First part where he said he sees himself standing on the beach is an indication that it's a dream. So this is a spiritual checkup. Then he sees himself on the ship. It's a spiritual checkup. Then he sees the ship starting to sink, which means now this is a foresight of what is about to happen, and he's back standing on the beach at the end, which is the vision part. Well, as it turns out, when I began to analyze this dream, I told the young man what it meant. I told him it meant you have gotten yourself involved into something that wasn't good. It's going to take you under, but I wouldn't worry about it too much, because in the end, you're going to be right back where you started. And about a week later, he was arrested. He was arrested for fraud, of all things, a white-collar crime. He ended up doing 3 years in the pen. He got out and started right back doing fine. Well, how was I able to do that? Well, I paid attention to the symbols in the dream, subjects and verbs. He's standing, which is location as well, on the beach. The beach is a symbol. It's a place where it's safe, but you're got to be careful while you're standing there, because you're right next to water. You can have a tsunami come. So you have to respect the water. Then all of a sudden, he finds himself on a ship, which is a safe place as long as you can navigate your way through the ocean. Then the ship sinks, which is not a good sign, and that's a verb. The ship sinks. He goes under, and he comes back to the beach. So you see how these symbols played a role in telling me what was going on in the dream? That's what you have to look at when you're looking at the symbols, whether it's a subject or a verb. Now, I must say to you, there are a lot of books out there that tells what this symbol mean and what that symbol mean. I'm not prepared to endorse any book right now. But what I will tell you is I have discovered that there is a symbolic way that God speaks in the Bible that sort of enlightens us to what symbols mean. For instance, if you have a friend who have a dream that she's in a car with this guy and he's driving down the highway and he's speeding real fast, and all of a sudden the highway patrolman pulls in behind him and throws the lights on him and he refuses to slow down and they crash. Well, what the dream means is, young lady, you're in a relationship with someone, you're not totally in control, and he's going way too fast. The police officer behind you is giving you a warning that, hey, you need to pull it over. But he refuses to slow down, and what ends up happening? Kaboom. Crash. So you have to pay attention to the symbols. Now, how do we get how do we get the meaning of symbols? Well, the problem is there's so many different symbols. And remember, I told you you're not going to have a PhD degree in interpreting dreams. This is just a crash course to make you aware of the language that's being spoken in your dreams, and you will become more fluent over time as you pay attention to that. And so one of the things I noticed is that even in the Bible, that God used symbolism the exactly same way in the Bible as you see in your dreams. For instance, if you dream about a snake, you refer back to what the Bible says about snakes, which is the first thing that comes to mind, the snake in the Garden of Eden. And when you dream about a snake, it's telling you that, hey, you're dealing with an individual that you think can be trusted, but they cannot be trusted. And those are the way the symbols come into play in the dream. And you have to have the right mindset. You have to be open to guidance, and you have to be open to constructive criticism, because this is a spiritual checkup. And then when you begin to deal with other symbols like the symbol of the tree, notice in the book of Psalms where it talks about a man, David says that a righteous man shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water. It describes a man and then describes him as a tree. Notice, if you will, when Jesus did a particular miracle on a blind man and he made clay and put it on the blind man's eyes, he asked the blind man, what do you see? He said, I see men walking as trees. Then Jesus touches the man, prays for him again. He said, what do you see now? He says, I see all things whole. For years, I thought that Jesus had made a mistake and he actually, woke up on the wrong side of the bed and didn't have all his powers intact and wasn't able to get the miracle right on the first try. But in reality, what Jesus did was he opened this man's eyes to see in the spirit, to see the symbolic language that God speaks. And so he showed him men as trees. Even if you would take into account the particular dream that Daniel interpreted for Nebuchadnezzar. When Nebuchadnezzar dreamed, he saw this tall tree that was stretched up to heaven, and the birds were in the trees and the beasts were underneath the tree. And he heard a voice said, cut down the tree. And Daniel didn't want to interpret the dream because he knew what the dream meant. And finally, Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar, oh, Nebuchadnezzar, that tree is you. And so Daniel, the one who is well known for interpreted dreams, shows the connection between a tree being symbolic to a man in a dream. And so this is the connection that I pull upon when interpreting a dream. There's a biblical connection in the symbols that you get. And so once you begin to apply the biblical connection between the symbols in your dreams, you will begin to see the dream more clearly. And once you've done that, you'll be ready to move on to the next step. Okay, step 6. Step 6 is to evaluate the similarities between your dreams and your current life. Well, what do I mean by that? If you dream you're riding on the back seat of a car and, you're partying out of control, and what the dream means is, number one, if you're on the back seat of the car, it means you're not in control of your life. So what you want to do is you want to begin to look around your life and find any similar incident that's going on in your life, where who's really calling the shots in your life at that point. So that's what you want to begin to ask yourself. You're looking for similarities between what's going on in my life and what's going on in the dream. Let me put the two together, because that's what's actually happening. Who's influencing you? If you dream about, you're talking to a snake or snakes, then you want to begin to ask yourself, who did I just begin dealing with? I recently recall a dream that I had where there was a particular business opportunity that was offered to me. And I was pondering it, and I was wondering whether or not I should take the position. And finally, I had a dream about a brown snake. That was it. And I was confused. I was like, a brown snake? That doesn't make any sense. Why is it a brown snake? That was a little too short. Then it dawned on me. The individual that was offering me this opportunity, last name was Brown. So I put the two together. So when you're beginning to evaluate the dreams, make sure you're looking at your current life. Because if it's a vision, it's speaking of something that's way down the road. But if it's a dream, it's thinking of something that's right now. And let me give you this. Here's a symbol. Ladies, if you dream about you're dealing with a dog or dogs, oh my God, this is a dead giveaway. It's an indication that you're dealing possibly with a person in a relationship that's just no good. And you know it. There's a difference between a snake. A snake is more subtle, but a dog is just a dog, okay? So when you begin to see that you're dreaming about dogs, evaluate your current life. Who are you dealing with? What is going on that's similar in this dream to what's similar in my life? And once you begin to pull those things together, then you will be able to fulfill the requirements of meeting step 6. And then you're ready to move on to the next step. Okay, final step, step 7. This is the most important step, and you have to pay attention to it. Step 7 is identify what is the overall theme of the dream. Well, what do I mean by the theme of the dream? Well, when you wake up, there's an overwhelming sensation that you get from the dream. That is the theme of the dream. And so what I've done is I've taken the time to write out 7 common themes that comes from that sensation. And what I'm going to do real quickly is I'm going to read off all of them for you so you would know what they are. Then I'm going to take time and I'm going to explain each one for you. Now, let me give you the explanation of those one by one. And the first one, which is talking about a call to prayer, what it is in this particular dream. Sometimes God will reveal to you what's going on in other people's family and things like that. And it's not so you can sit up and gossip on the phone about it, but he's calling you to pray about it. He's not exposing the business of people so you can feel special, but it's because you're obligated in a sense now to care for your sister and your brother. So that's what it means when you're dealing with the theme of a call to prayer. I recall a particular vision I had not too long ago. I had a sister that's very sickly, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, I had a vision or dream that she was sick. So I got up and started praying. And later on that morning, she called me and told me she wasn't feeling good. But by the time the sun got up, she was feeling better. So sometimes that is the meaning of those dreams. It's like you're getting an intelligence report in the spirit realm about what's going on, and you need to pray about it. Well, the second thing, which is a call to take a specific action, is similar to the ones that are very easy to decipher, like Joseph getting the dream that says Herod is trying to kill Jesus. Hey, you don't need an interpretation in the morning when you wake up from a dream like that. You know to get up, pack the bags, grab Mary and the baby, and you get on a mule and you get out of town. So you take a specific action. Once I was asked to preach at a particular church, and the night before I got there, the Spirit spoke to me in a vision and told me, hey, this guy wants you to be his musician. Do not take this position. So I get to the church, dead set on not accepting the position as a musician. But lo and behold, when I get there, before I get up to minister, the gentleman offers me a position to be the assistant pastor. So I'm saying to myself, whoa, wait a minute. That's not what the vision said. And later on, after I ministered and I was still in this church, and finally the pastor got up and said, we'd like to thank God for our musician who has been with us for 7 years, and she's going to be leaving us at the end of the year. I said, oh, there it is. So this guy is using the context of bringing me in as a assistant pastor in order to lure me in just to be his musician. And he pressured me. And finally it slipped out of his mouth where he said, I really want you to be my musician. He said, assistant pastor. But I had already known because it had been shown to me in a vision. So that particular theme is to ensure that you take a specific action. Now, the third theme, which is a warning that trouble is coming, it's normally God will forewarn you that you're about to go through something in which you will see maybe a storm coming your way, or you will see maybe a tornado coming your way, or you will see maybe flood waters coming your way. It is an indication that you are about to go through something. And so this is the time for you to really become consecrated and not angry, because these storms can either make you better or they can make you bitter. So he's giving you a warning before something comes and destroy you. The fourth thing, which is a message that a blessing is coming, is basically God showing you, hey, this is a report card in the spirit. You're being promoted to the next grade, or you're getting a promotion on your job. You're about to be blessed with a new car. You're about to be blessed with a new house or something of that nature. It's just basically a report card in the spirit that's telling you what's going on. And the fifth one, which is you're in good standings with God, is basically the same thing. It's just showing you, it's a pat on the back. Hey, I'm proud of what you're doing. Keep up the good work. You're being blessed. Others are being blessed by your work. Continue to do that. And the sixth one, which is you're not in good standing with God. Well, it's a report card, but it's not a good report card. It's that part in the middle of the semester where the teacher or the professor pulls you into their office and show you your grades in the grade book and tell you, hey, buddy, you might want to consider withdrawing from this class because it doesn't look like you're going to be able to make it. But what God is showing you in the spirit realm is, hey, you need to pull your grades up in life. When you see yourself beginning to repeat certain cycles, it's an indication that you're failing to learn the lessons that life are trying to teach you. And so when you begin to get visions and dreams of this nature, it's God showing you that you're not in good standings with me, and that's why this is happening in your life. And finally, the last particular theme of a dream, which is something is about to happen. What it's telling you is this is a vision of something that is about to happen. And you have to be able to decipher the vision in order to figure out what is about to happen. And I recall years ago, back in September, I had a weird dream. I saw myself coming down the stairs trying to get out of this building. And I saw people rushing down the stairs. And when I got to the bottom of the building, went through this little trap door and I looked outside and I saw people staring up into the sky, and I saw white passenger vans flying through the air. Then I pointed at one of the vans in the air and said, that's the president's van. And I noticed that there was a great sense of we were at war. Maybe about a week and a half later, 9/11 happened. At that time, I was not skilled enough to decipher what the dream meant. But when I look back at that dream, I now see how I could have applied my own 7 steps at that time and foresaw what was coming. Well, maybe I couldn't have made a call to the White House and told them, and they would have actually listened. But it was actually a vision. And, you know, there's all kind of research out there that shows that people see things before they happen in visions. And when you look at that particular dream that I had, people coming out of stairs, where people were rushing down the stairs in the World Trade Center trying to get out. But there's one symbol in the dream that's kind of weird, which I have to take you back to the right mindset, kind of like the drunk man sitting on the bus, was the white flying vans. Well, white passenger vans don't fly. But what do fly? Airplanes with passengers. And so I pointed out at one of the vans and says, that's the president's van. And so if I had known then, I could have pulled the symbolism that these are referring to airplanes. Trouble is coming from airplanes in the sky, and we're actually going to be at war. And so sometimes you will receive visions that this is going to happen. I recalled being asked to preach once, and the night before I went to minister, I saw the pastor sitting in a limousine, and he had his family in the limousine. And I walked up to the limousine and thinking that he was going to let me into the car, but he didn't. He just rolled down the window and he talked to me on the outside of his limousine, and the dream ended. I woke up the next morning and I knew what it meant. He's going to renege on you. But for the sake of my own integrity, I went anyway. And he found an excuse to back out of his word, which was not really a problem, but I took the time to make sure that I fulfill my obligation. And sometimes you have to take the humble road. You know, we preach about humility. Well, humility is pretty much the same word as humiliation. And sometimes you have to be willing to be humiliated in order to be humble. And so I took the humble approach and did what was necessary of me. And sometimes that's the main purpose of God showing you a vision. In order for you to keep the right mindset, the right mind frame, in order for him to get the right thing out of you. Because we don't get to control what we dream about. It's as if a being beyond our own control downloads information into us. But the trick is trying to decipher the code or the language of your dream. And the 7 steps that I've just given you is a start. It gives you the ability to be able to use something that's practical, which is nothing more than write everything down. Look at the setting. Where is this taking place? What is the lighting? What is the weather like? Then from there, you move on to underlining the subjects that are within the sentences. Then you move on to what are the verbs within the sentence. Then you ask yourself, what are the symbols within the dream? Then you move on to asking yourself, what is similar between what's going on in this dream and what's going on in my life? And last but not least, that feeling you get when you wake up, something is not right. It's going to place that dream in a category for you. And that way, you will get a sensation that points you in the right direction to sit and meditate and to pray and to ask God. Because Daniel said, or was it Joseph? Both of them would tell you that interpretations come from God. They don't come from me. They won't come from you, but it will come from him leading you by his Spirit. Well, that concludes the teaching, my friend. I pray to God in the name of his son, Jesus, that you would receive this with an open mind and allow him to speak through you and to reveal himself to you through your dreams, through your visions. For he clearly stated that in the last days, I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, old men shall dream dreams, and young men shall see visions. You're going to have dreams. You're going to have visions. Now you have a method to open up the meaning of those dreams and visions. And I pray you do the right thing with them. God bless you.